Okay, let's dive into a really fascinating and kind of tricky puzzle in the world of accounting. It's called IFRC 14, and it deals with a problem that, honestly, most companies would kill to have. Well, until they see what it does to their balance sheet.
So, what happens when a company actually has too much money in its pension plan? You know, a big cash surplus just sitting there for employee retirements. Sounds like a great problem, right? But, as you're about to find out, the accounting for it is, well, it's anything but simple.
Yeah, it's one of those good problems that can create a really complex accounting puzzle. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through exactly why a surplus on paper doesn't just automatically become an asset on the books. We'll break down the rules and see how this good situation can actually turn into a huge headache.
All right, to make this real, let's use a simple example. Let's say we have Company A. They've done a fantastic job with their defined benefit pension plan, and now it has a $10 million surplus. That means the money in the plan is worth $10 million more than what they expect to pay out to retirees. Awesome, right? So the big question is, can Company A just slap that cool $10 million surplus onto its balance sheet as an asset? I mean, your gut reaction is probably, yeah, of course, it's their money. But this is where the accounting rules, and specifically IFRIC 14, throw a wrench in the works. The answer is, not so fast.
And the reason for that is something called the asset ceiling. You can think of it like a reality check from the accountants. IFRIC 14 basically says, look, you can only recognize a pension asset up to the value of the economic benefit you can actually get. So that $10 million, it's only a real asset if the company can actually, use it or get it back.
So that's the key here. This economic benefit can really only come from two places. The first path is getting a straight-up cash refund from the plan. The second path is using that surplus to pay less into the plan in the future. So let's dig into that first option, getting a refund.
Okay, so path one, getting a refund. Getting a cash refund from that $10 million surplus sounds great, right? Super simple. But IFRIC 14 puts up this huge wall called the unconditional right test. And let me tell you, the standard sets a really high bar for when a company can actually assume that cash is available. So to even think about counting that surplus as an asset through a refund, the company has to prove it has an unconditional right to the money. This means, first, the plan's own rules have to allow it. And this is the really critical part. That right can't depend on some future event you don't control. Like needing a trustee to sign off on it, who could just say no. It's a really, really tough test to pass.
And this right here, this quote from the standard, just spells it out perfectly. It basically says if your right to a refund depends on anything uncertain that's not totally in your control, you don't have an unconditional right, period. So any little bit of uncertainty means you can't count it. For a lot of companies, this makes path one a non-starter. So let's check out the other option. All right, so path two, reducing contributions. If getting a refund is off the table, the next best thing, and honestly, the most common way to get value from that surplus is to just use it to pay less in the future. It's kind of like having a prepaid gift card for your pension plan.
So what happens is Company A uses that extra $10 million to cover the cost of benefits its employees are earning today. This saves them from having to put their own cash into the plan. That cash savings, that's the economic benefit. Pretty straightforward, right? Well,
Just when you think we've got a clear path to recognizing that asset, a huge complication can pop up, usually from outside regulators. And this, my friends, is where the story takes a big twist. See, a lot of places have laws called minimum funding requirements, or MFRs for short. Now, these rules are there for a good reason, to protect employees and make sure their pensions are safe. But the weird thing is, they can actually force a company to put cash into the plan, even when the plan already has a surplus on paper.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this conflict. Let's say Company A's actual cost for the year, what we call the service cost, is $2 million. That $10 million surplus to easily cover that, no problem. But some regulator comes along with their own set of rules and says, nope, you have to contribute $4 million in cash this year. This MFR completely blows up the company's plan to just use the surplus.
So this MFR conflict leads us to probably the most backward-sounding thing in all of pension accounting. A situation where having a surplus actually creates a liability on your balance sheet. I know, it sounds crazy. Let's unpack how that even works.
Seriously, how can a rule that forces you to add money to an overfunded plan create a liability? It makes no sense on the surface, but the logic all comes down to this one question. Will the company ever see a benefit from that extra cash they're being forced to put in?
okay, so here's the rule that makes it all happen.
The MFR forces Company A to pay in $4 million, but the real cost is only $2 million. That extra $2 million they're forced to contribute, it's basically trapped cash. Because of that asset ceiling we talked about, the company gets no future benefit from it. So, accounting rules say they have to recognize a liability today for that future forced payment. It's wild. The surplus is there, but they can't use it and they still have to pay more in.
So, after all that, all these twists, turns, and paradoxes, what's the big takeaway? Why does this whole pension puzzle with IFRIC 14 even matter?
Well, the main thing is that a big headline number, like a $10 million pension surplus, can be super misleading. You really have to dig deeper. A pension surplus isn't always a one-for-one asset. That asset ceiling puts a limit on what you can even recognize. The real question is about the economic benefit. Can the company actually get that value back? And then these minimum funding requirements, the MFRs, can come in and just trap the surplus. And in the worst case, even create a liability. You gotta understand these rules to get the real story of a company's financial health.
And this really leaves us with a big question, right? As governments get stricter with pension rules, how are companies supposed to navigate this fine line? On one hand, they have to secure retirements for their employees. On the other, they have to report their own financial health accurately. It's a huge balancing act, and really, understanding this puzzle is the first step to reading between the lines of a financial statement.